Hello, my name is Lloyd Chapman. I'm president and founder of the American Small Business League, and I've got something amazing to show you today. Let me start off with this. Can you see this? Is that working? Okay. So this is a report from the SBA Inspector General from 1995. And it says, over the past few years, the Investigations Division has noted several instances of a particular fraudulent practice. What it says is companies that lost size standard protest and were officially found by the SBA to not be small businesses were continuing to represent themselves as small businesses. And the SBA Inspector General proposed that the agency periodically generate a list of companies found ineligible to self-certify as small for contracts under a specific NSA code and circulate it to all federal agencies for their use. So 20 years ago, the Inspector General found contracting fraud. So let's make a list of these fraudulent companies and give it to the agencies. The SBA said no. What they said exactly was the risk outweighed the benefits. So let's jump forward 10 years to 2005. In 2005, the SBA Inspector General released Report 515. It says this. Can you see that? I think I've got this memorized. It says, let me read it. One of the most important challenges facing the Small Business Administration and the entire federal government today is that large businesses are receiving small business procurement awards and the agency receiving credit for these awards. One of the most important challenges facing the SBA and the entire federal government today. That's the Inspector General, not a conspiracy, not the Inspector General. Now here's the fascinating thing. This was 9 years ago in 2005. Every Inspector General since 2005 has reiterated this every year. So every year for actually 10 years, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 14, right? Every year for 10 years, every Inspector General has said this is the #1 problem for a decade, right? Now, I don't have a sign for this one, but I've got it memorized. In 2009, the GAO released Report 10108 that said this: by failing to hold firms accountable, the SBA and contracting agencies have sent a message to the contracting community that there's no punishment or consequences for committing fraud. I'm going to say that again. So to me, this sounds like the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, is saying the SBA is encouraging people to commit fraud. By failing to hold firms accountable, the SBA and contracting agencies have sent a message to the contracting community: there's no punishment or consequences for committing fraud. So 20 years ago, the SBA Inspector General found that there was fraud and said, we need to put out a list of these companies so agencies won't do business with them. The SBA goes, no. 10 years later, the Inspector General said, hey, you know, this is one of the biggest problems facing the SBA and the entire federal government today. The SBA did nothing. 2009, the GAO says the SBA is encouraging people to commit fraud. Here's the really funny part. So here's what the SBA is proposing. Ready for this? You're not going to believe this. Specifically, the rule proposes to amend the Small Business Administration's program regulations to implement statutory provisions establishing a safe harbor from fraud penalties for individuals or firms that misrepresent businesses' concerns of being a small business for the purpose of federal procurement opportunities. I'll read that again. Specifically, the rule proposes to amend the Small Business Administration's program regulations to implement statutory provisions establishing a safe harbor from fraud penalties for individuals or firms that misrepresent business concerns as being a small business for the purpose of federal procurement opportunities if they acted in good faith. Now, you know, if you're not familiar with contract, good faith is, how do you prove someone acted in good faith or didn't? You can't. So this is the loophole. The SBA is basically wanting to pass a policy to legalize fraud. Here's another poster I want to show you. This is the penalty for misrepresenting your status as a small business. Punishable by a fine of not more than $500,000 or by imprisonment not more than 10 years or both. You see that? This is Section 16D of the Small Business Act. It says whoever misrepresents their business as a small business to get a small business contract can be punished by a fine of not more than $500,000 or by imprisonment not more than 10 years or both. That sounds like a pretty serious crime. So Congress, and when they passed this law, that was a serious crime. misrepresenting yourself as a small business to illegally get contracts, 10 years in prison and $500,000 fine. And the SBA is going to repeal that law with a policy to establish a safe harbor from fraud penalties. I can't believe it. I've never seen anything like this in my life. It's unfreaking believable. So I think this is just laughable. I can't imagine they thought they were going to get away with this, by the way. But you know why they can get away with this? Here's a funny thing. If you're watching this, go on the internet and see who's objecting to this. Guess who it is? Is it the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent Business, Women Impacting Public Policy, the Women's Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the National Small Business Association? Who's objecting to it? The American Small Business League. Think about that. So, yeah, the SBA wants to establish a safe harbor to protect companies that are committing contracting fraud, and no one objects to it but the American Small Business League. That's because we're the only legitimate small business advocacy group, I think, in the country. That's my opinion. Anyway, help us stop the SBA from adopting this policy to legalize fraud. And they're taking public comment until what? The middle of what? August? Until the middle of August. So this video will be attached to a press release. It'll show you how to put comments in. But this is absurd. Don't let the SBA legalize fraud. Don't let the Small Business Administration repeal the Small Business Act and cheat the American people, the middle class, out of hundreds of billions of dollars. Help us out here. My name is Lloyd Chapman, President and founder of the American Small Business League. Thank you very much.